Hi everyone, welcome to the sports management lecture. This is going to be going over chapter 15. And first and foremost, really want to thank you all for being flexible with this online format. Please let me know if you have any questions about the content that we go over today. But again, not only watch this video, but watch Dr. Han's video as well, because he is the director of sports management here at Cal State Long Beach. It's a master's program. So again, if anything that I talk about today is really interesting to you, feel free to reach out to him. He definitely likes reaching out to students as early in their decision-making process as possible. But again, let us know if you have any questions. But again, Dr. Han is the director of our sports management grad program. He is the one who sees all the applications, helps make informed choices for students. So he's a wonderful resource as we go into this space. So again, talking about sports management, this is very much getting back into our professional practice sphere. So again, we kind of covered a lot of different things so far, but this is our final one getting into sports management, which is really kind of the business side of sports. So everything surrounding the actual sport itself, or like the sport game itself, is kind of on the backs of folks who are in the sports management space. And so to give you some of the context of how this industry is growing, we not only see this growing by money, so obviously from 2008 to 2018, so in 10 years, we see a massive jump in the amount of money that's actually being put into the sports industry, including ticket sales, licensing products, sport video games, sporting goods, and facilities incomes. But it's also growing by the amount of job opportunities, right? Which is very different than maybe a lot of other jobs that we've talked about in this class, where it's extremely competitive, it's extremely specialized. This is a job sector that's going to continue to grow. And we're going to talk about a couple of different examples as to how not only are the opportunities going to grow, but it can also grow into a very lucrative, very comfortable financial situation for the folks who want to pursue sports management. So what is sports management? Well, this is the study and practice of all people, activities, businesses, and organizations involved in producing, facilitating, promoting, or organizing any sports-related business or product. And so basically what people in the sports management sector do, they provide support services, facilities, amenities, and really make the physical activity experience for performers and fans very enjoyable. And it's very much more focused on the jobs surrounding the sport, more so than the sport or activity itself. And so the career opportunities are extremely varied, they're expanding, and so we're going to talk about a lot of different ways in which our sports management sphere often intersect with a lot of other physical activity spheres and other physical activity domains. And so now I'm going to show you just a very brief video of different types of sports management jobs. This is presented by Southern New Hampshire University as kind of just like a spiel to get you to apply to their program. But I think it is also very informative for things that you can do with a sports management degree.
The field of sport management is vast. Sport managers can be found working for professional teams, colleges, and universities, recreational departments, and sports marketing firms. They can be event managers, facility managers, sports economists, financial, promotion, or information experts. They can run the front office, work behind the scenes, or act as the interface between players, coaches, and the media. In all of these sports management roles, energy, motivation, good sportsmanship, and teamwork are considered strong assets. But there's more to a job in sport management than first meets the eye. Getting these coveted jobs takes hustle. It also demands excellent analytical thinking, communication skills, and standout business savvy. The most serious players in the field start with a degree in sport management at an established accredited university. Let's take a look at 3 SNHU alumni with completely different careers, all within the sport management industry, and see what their paths have been like.
It's a truly unique opportunity for a student to come in at SNHU and really get into this business, understand it, and then walk out better prepared than anywhere else in the country, I think. After graduating, I interviewed with Red Bull, and I was one of the first few employees on the marketing team in 1998. We took the brand from zero to $1 billion business. In 2006, when Red Bull bought the Metro Stars in Major League Soccer, I was asked to come over and manage the team. What I learned at SNHU is that if you're not working as a team, you're not going to get anywhere. The environment is special. You're going to have access to a lot of executives who are alumni from the school who are in the business, from minor league sports to major league to college sports. So the students get a much broader perspective of how to manage a sports team, how to do certain things, and I think it's an absolute unique and important facet of the program.
There are so many different levels of business in the sports industry. I work in consulting for a talent representation agency. We represent athletes in all areas of their business, and corporate brands hire us to assist with their sports marketing efforts. My job changes every single day, which is part of the reason why I love it. And because of the relationships and opportunities that I had through my job, I don't think there is a sporting event that happens in this town that I've missed. SNHU helped me get into the sports industry. All the staff at SNHU has experience beyond the classroom. They recognized what I needed out of my experience, and they tailored it to me. I got connected with alumni all over the country. It was amazing to be able to connect with other people who were in the industry doing what I wanted to be doing, and I definitely felt like I was at an advantage.
My name is Greg, and I studied online at Southern New Hampshire University. I came to Southern New Hampshire University to change my career, and now I work for a professional hockey team. When I first graduated with my undergrad in general business, I wasn't really satisfied, so I went back and got my master's degree in sport management. There's a lot more that happened within the sports organization than just the player personnel, and I knew it was there, but how to get into it, I don't think many people actually know. And all the faculty experiences in the industry was great. All the coursework I had at Southern New Hampshire has helped me in my job now, whether it was a marketing class or a sports law class. Being able to go back to Southern New Hampshire to change my career, being able to take all of my life experiences, still wanting to work with people, but move it into the sports field and be happy to get up every morning to go to a job that I love to do is something I would never exchange.
Okay, so I really just wanted to show you that just to, again, illuminate that it's such a varied and wide field. Like, yes, sports management is really everything outside of just like the sport stuff itself, but you can do so many different things. And the book really talks about how we need to be very mindful of talking about sports management as being very similar to a lot of other degree programs that we might find ourselves in. This doesn't really apply to us here at Cal State, but just some things to be mindful of is that sometimes people think of sports management as being very similar to recreation programs or sport tourism. But some of the difference between these things is really illuminated by, obviously the title, but also what you study in these degree programs. So for rec programs, these are folks that get degrees in recreation and very much more focused on, again, developing things in much greater depths like classes that you take for orientations to leisure and parks, recreation programming, leisure and human development, and much more of these majors go into fields like corporate fitness, nonprofit recreation, military recreation, parks and rec, which is why I have the picture of Parks and Rec in the corner, campus intramurals, and other forms of leisure services. So very different than like the high-level sport management programs that are necessary for these like business enterprises of sport. Also, we have sports tourism, which is very similar because they address how to develop and manage sport-related travel opportunities and really determining their effects. But most of the classes that you take in these kinds of programs are things like travel and tourism, management and supervision of leisure facilities and personnel, hospitality revenue management, and really where a lot of people get their careers in the tourism space are for museums and other types of like more supplementary or auxiliary sporting experiences. So things like Hall of Fames, special event management, travel coordinators, sports commission administrators, while sports management tends to focus more so on sports-specific applications of business principles like management and marketing for both nonprofit and for-profit settings. And so there's a lot of different ways in classes that you'll be aware of these things. Like some of the classes that you would take in our program could be anything from like legal aspects to sport, human resource management in sport, technology in sports management, and many, many more things. And so most of our lecture is really going to be focusing on this graphic on the left-hand side. focusing on different settings and different roles that are required for each of these settings in sports management. But overall, most of our sports management industry settings really fall under these three categories. So the first one is really focusing on sports entertainment, which is where we have all major sports organizations from professional to the Olympics to college and even high-level high school athletics. So this is, again, MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, motorsports, minor leagues, college athletics, so like NC2A sports, Olympics related events. And so again, very much more focused on like the commercialized efforts around sport. This would be our first setting for sports management. Then the second setting would be for support services. So this could be anything like sporting goods, like manufacturing, distribution of goods, retail services, and it can also be sports services. So things like event management, insurance, making sure that the patrons are protected, as well as the events are being protected, communications and information like licensing, travel, agents, and really things surrounding the sport itself. And then finally, we get to our third setting, which is really about participation type sports. So these can be things that aren't that are sports and physical activity, but aren't necessarily the commercialized highest level sport like we see in professionals, Olympics, college sports. Participation sport settings are very much more for common folk, for people who just want to engage in sports, who want to engage in physical activity for health reasons, for a bunch of different reasons. And within sports participation, there are usually two main segments. The first one is for profit. So this is more professional, commercialized settings. So things like golf courses, golf club, country club settings, bowling alleys, fitness centers, ice skating rinks. But you can also have nonprofit participation segments, which are things like parks and recreation departments, YMCAs, hospital fitness, boys and girls clubs. So things that are relatively free or low cost, just to get people to, again, have fun, develop their physical activity. And we see that in these different sectors. And so again, all three of these settings are the most common settings for sports management. And all of these settings need the following 7 roles within them in one form or another, really depending on the specificity of the setting, how much money there is in the setting, the organization, the business aspect. But all 7 of the roles that we're going to talk about right now, you will find in each of these 3 settings, even if they're not the money makers that maybe a lot of us think about when we think about sports management and business. And so the first role is event and venue management. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved in event and venue management. The first one is sponsorship. So basically you're getting company money for advertising or for maintenance purposes. We also have security, making sure that people and patrons are safe. Venue setup, so these are folks that maybe are hired contractually to come and set up for various events. So like for folks who, if you've ever been to SoFi Stadium, the SoFi Stadium is the stadium in Inglewood that's shared by both the Rams and the Chargers. And venue setup is really important because typically we don't find that they're usually home on that same week during a football game because the venue between switching all the Charger stuff to the Ram stuff or vice versa would be really hard. But there have been instances in which we've had, like, let's say, a Rams game on Sunday night and then a Chargers game Monday night in the next day. And so venue setup is really important for that kind of transition. But this could also be for concerts at these venues. Like SoFi, again, is a great example because not only do we have a lot of sporting events there, but we also have concerts there. We're going to have Olympics there. We're going to have a bunch of different things. So venue setup is really important. We also have concessions, so getting beer, food, drinks, whatever, game and event scheduling. So like I said, I think SoFi is a great example of this because it is a very busy stadium. Stuff is happening there all the time. So whether it's a sporting event, a concert, some other exhibition, something, it's important to make sure that you're not overlapping and kind of double booking SoFi during really busy seasons. Also game presentation, so similar to venue setup, customer service, and just generally things that are required to maintain the safety and success of things being hosted at these various venues. The second role are things like financial management. So these are folks that are very much focused on the money, financial aspects of things and surrounding the sporting business. And it's important to recognize that money really is the lifeblood of nearly all sports. We need money to have them come and play, and it's really up to financial management teams to bring in that money from various sources. It's also important to spend money on necessary things while maintaining the business side of sport. And so these are folks that administer budgets, seeing how much money they can and can't spend, oversee income allocation, so how much money they're actually willing to be able to give to the athletes, to the coaches, to HR personnel. These are also folks that pursue development opportunities, so reaching out to local businesses, trying to get sponsorships, endorsements, advertisements, and then they're the ones who handle those investments. So making sure that they're very comfortable with large amounts of money, if that is the kind of business aspect or business goal of that sporting organization, and making sure that those monies are invested safely and tactfully. The third role is human resource management, and it's important for us to recognize that employees of an organization are their greatest asset, and it's human resources' job to maintain the happiness and healthiness of their workers. And so they do so in many different ways. They do so because they're the folks who hire people, so they bring them in. They're also the folks that train them to be able to perform their job duties. They're also the folks that maintain health and happiness, and a lot of that can come through counseling, health and lifestyle services. So, we talked about ergonomic engineers or fitness trainers who go into business spaces to help train these employees to be healthier and happier. But unfortunately, these are a lot of folks who are also on the they're part of their job responsibilities is to fire employees, the dismissal of employees. And a lot of people in HR must acknowledge that unions, like union protections, are really good to maintain worker happiness, and union management relationships are essential for this collaborative environment for something that is extremely people focused, right? As a lot of sports and sport businesses are. The fourth role is risk management, which really evolved from a recent kind of cultural inclination for people to feel like they need to have compensation for things that have been wrongdoings onto them. And I'm kind of being cryptic about this, but basically meaning that this evolved from lawsuit protections. People were suing the crap out of everybody for tripping in a stadium, for having adverse reaction to a hot dog that they had, getting too drunk, being overserved alcohol at these events, and suing the stadium for overserving. And so risk management very much evolved from people protecting themselves from lawsuits. And a lot of these protections really concerned inadequate or improper security, food service distribution, supervision and safety of the venue and the sporting event, instruction, and facility and equipment design. So a lot of these things really is about making sure people are safe and happy, but also protecting the business side of that sport and that spectatorship. And a lot of compliance officers and lawyers maintain compliance and safety while minimizing risk. And they do so because they either have the fine print of when you sign up to attend a certain event saying that you can't sue us for XYZ reason. You are acknowledging that there are inherent risks of being a part of this event. And so they do so because, again, they have to protect their own business liabilities too. The fifth type of role, which I'm sure a lot of us might be very familiar with because this could be a very good kind of introductory role for folks graduating outside of college, which is marketing management. And there's a lot of different sectors to marketing management. So the first one is research and development, and roles within this space can really range from sophisticated analyses of consumer opinions, economic impact of people buying, selling, pursuing certain things in this space. It could also be about creating focus groups, brainstorming sessions about how to make packaging safer, just generally how to get people to buy stuff. That's what research and development is really about. You also have sport promotion, which is taking action to heighten the interest of sport through promotions like product sampling, premium giveaways, price reductions, player appearances, camps, clinics, basically just kind of community outreach to get people to become fans of that sport. And then kind of as a consequence of being a fan, willing to spend money to watch that sport or that event. The third type of marketing management job is sports sponsorship, which is really involving an exchange between a company and a sport organization. And really typically where we find that company provides a product, a service, or money to that sport organization in order to provide a platform for that sponsorship. And so this can come in many different forms, but typically we see that this can come in the form of advertising, which is our fourth role, in which advertising by definition is any paid, non-personal, clearly sponsored message conveyed through the media and is seen pretty much everywhere in sport. And so we see this in a lot of different ways, like stadium name rights, ads at concession stands, commercials, getting a beer at SoFi and having it be endorsed by another company, even though that beer company is its own kind of advertisement in and of itself. And so there's a lot of ways in which advertisements give money to not just the sporting event and the sport organization, but also the company that paid for that advertisement too. We also have merchandising, which is any licensed product that can be sold. So it can be anything from toys to car accessories to team mascot pasta to video game character skins. Like you can have NFL skins in Fortnite. You could wear jerseys, and that's a type of merchandise. And basically it's just another way for people to engage in their fandom outside of just watching the sport. And then finally we have distribution. So this is basically how we get that extra stuff out to the consumers. And so this connects the sport product or the sport service with the ultimate consumer and does require relationships with distributors, which is, like truck drivers, trains, cross ocean boats, services like that. You also have retailers, so these are the folks that are actually selling the stuff, storage facilities where we actually keep the stuff, and transportation systems and broadcasting and streaming services. And so that's arguably one of the most lucrative forms of distribution, is how people are able to watch sports without doing so in person. So like broadcasting rights, streaming rights, and I feel like every year the NFL is a really good example because those streaming services always evolve and change. Who has the streaming rights to a Thursday night football game? Who has streaming rights to these international exhibition games? And there's millions, billions of dollars on the line for these types of things because people are willing to pay money to watch their sports. And so marketing management has a lot of different ways in which people can be involved. And a lot of folks, unless you're at like the highest level, you can be someone coming right out of college and do market management research. You could also be in public relations. So this is our sixth role. And really, this is where folks really seek to achieve positive relationships between sports organizations and its most important constituents. And I want us to be very mindful of what the constituents are. Typically, we can think of constituents as the consumer, right? So the people who are actually spending money on the sports event or the sport spectatorship itself. But it can also be the sports stakeholders, so the folks who are actually funding that sport through donations, through lucrative deals, through political means. And so they usually do so, and they usually maintain these relationships through athlete communications, through interviews, appearances, media outreach. They supply story ideas and really maintain overall satisfaction by creating a narrative. That, oh no, this person who was drunk driving the other night, oh, well, they're just having a really bad time in their life right now. They just went through a divorce, blah, 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 all this stuff. And they really do make these narratives to make people maintain fandoms because they've seen historically that if people are unhappy with the sporting event by an athlete's choice, by an owner's choice, if somebody said a slur on the field, that causes people to lose fandom. And as a subsequent cause of that, that causes people to not spend as much money on the sport. And so that would be really bad for business. And so PR is really good at making people happy. And again, people can extend to consumers, but also can be extended to people who spend the most money on those sports, like sports stakeholders. And then finally, we have program management, which is our seventh role, which really kind of function between scheduling and facility and equipment management. So for scheduling, this is essential to maintain streamline of competition within games, events, and even practices with multiple sports, all using the same facilities or using the same equipment. And a lot of that really has to take into account for travel time, travel cost, and travel burden. And so scheduling is really important for program management, making sure that things happen when they're supposed to happen. That being said, when they are supposed to be in those respective spaces, facility and equipment maintenance is also essential because it's crucial to keep the organization safe, clean, and operative, both with internal and external environments. So this could be mental health checkups, but it can also be maintaining the helmet safety of a professional football team. And so this can be extremely varied, it can be extremely wide, but all 7 of these roles are seen in each of these 3 settings. So do take note of what these roles are, where these settings would be in sports management, and where we see these things grow and change. And so in terms of a career in sports management, like I said, there's a lot of different opportunities in a variety of industry segments and functional areas that you can really find a lot of benefit in. This is from the book, but typically we have to require certain competency standards if you are going into the sports management space. Most sports management programs are graduate degrees. Very rarely do you find a undergraduate sports management program, just because even though the industry is growing, they are requiring people in that sector to be very proficient in their skills. And so based on the Commission of Sports Management Accreditation, COSMA, their accreditation is to really recognize the excellence in sports management education and evaluates these programs by making sure they cover at least, at bare minimum, these 5 broad areas. So making sure they have foundations in sport, right? So historical, sociological, psychological aspects of sport, really what is sport? What is sports management? So the foundations of sports management, so management concepts, governments and policy, as well as international sport. Also making sure that they're in their 3rd requirement, functions of sports management. So understanding sport operations, sports marketing, sports communication, sports finance, and economics. The 4th is sports management and environment. So this is where we get into our legal aspects, ethical aspects, diversity issues, technological advancements in sports management, really just how sports are growing as kind of a cultural force, and making sure that the folks within that cultural force are safe and protected. And then finally, acknowledging that there are integrative experiences in career planning that are required for you to have before you go and become a professional in the sports management field. And so Dr. Hahn talks a lot about that so much of the program is really focused on hands-on learning and hands-on training, that it's imperative that you have an internship or other practical or experiential learning and really have a capstone culminating experience for knowing what sports management really is. But that again, internships and field experience is crucial because real life practical experience is what people look for when they're hiring people in the sports management sector. And so all of these things to consider, depending on where you go, you can make a very comfortable living for yourself depending on, again, if you're working more for a business aspect of sport, spectator sport, or if you're more for a participation sport. But all this to say, there's a lot of opportunity out there. And again, anything from this, part-time esports marketing management job where you can make 20 to 25 an hour part-time, which if you do this as full as you possibly can at 20 hours per week, you can be making $1,600 a month by doing something part-time in Bell Gardens, doing something that's hybrid remote. So that's a really cool option there. You could also be a football brands manager for Stack Sports, which is in Torrance, just right up the road, which you can make 6 figures doing. And then this is something that's not paid for, but again, is necessary for you to kind of get your feet wet in this industry. You have to take these internships as they come, especially stuff that hopefully you think of is very interesting. So this one is, again, working as a sports management intern. You get unpaid internship with college credit, so that could be something that you have for your graduate degree. But again, these are things that you are to be aware of in the sports management space. And like I said, there's a lot of really exciting growth opportunities in this space. New technology will continue to evolve and change the platform of sport. And so that's kind of an advantageous point for you all, just because you're young, you're on social media, you know kind of what things are trending, how technology works. And so that is a really advantageous characteristic that you might not even recognize can help you in a professional capacity, which it very much will in sports management. Esports evolution, we're going to talk about more in a second, but basically acknowledging that this is a very rapidly growing sector of the sports management space, even if it's not in the traditional sports management space. Kind of continuing on the platform of new technology, it's important for us to think of new innovative ways to engage with people and fans on the mobile media front. It's important for us to continue sponsorships with partners by making sure that we maintain relationships with key revenue streams, making sure that we have sharp business savvy in these sectors, and then acknowledging that sports are a medium and representative of a changing society, that for a lot of our sectors and businesses in sport, there's a lot of kind of moral obligation that a lot of these sports organizations feel like they need to adhere to. So acknowledging that there's a social responsibility towards maintaining those relationships in sports, like making sure that there's progressive, equitable values that really kind of focus on DEI, just for the sense of being a progressive business entity. And so all this to say, there's a lot of really cool ways in which we are seeing sports management grow as a field, especially in the esports phenomenon space. And so I kind of just like to bring this up because, again, esports is a new kind of avenue in the sports management space that not a lot of people consider to be part of the traditional sporting environment. But as we reflect on our week one definition for what a sport is, it is an institutionalized competitive activity that involves physical skill and specialized facilities or equipment and is conducted according to an accepted set of rules in order to determine a winner. Esport can be institutional, right? There is an overseeing body that decides how you play and how you win. It is extremely competitive, especially at the highest levels of these tournaments. If any of us have ever hot lobbed on and streamed on Discord or Twitch to see these competitions, are extremely competitive. It's very specialized, skipping over physical, in which you have to, again, be very good at those respective skill sets, very fine-tuned motor control. But the idea of physicality is kind of the crux. The idea that a lot of people think of physicality to be a key component of playing video games, that the finite motor control isn't enough to be considered physical. But as kind of a counter argument to that, it's been reported that folks who play esports burn thousands of calories, just like any other traditional sporting athlete would. It's also important to recognize, too, when you have athletes that maybe aren't fully able-bodied, like folks in the Paralympics, who might not have full range of motion, full muscular control, is their sporting experience any less legitimized than folks who are able-bodied? And so the idea of just doing finite motor control as being not enough could also be form of, discriminatory aspect of the esporting space. And so again, wherever you fall in this argument is completely your prerogative, but I want you to really be open-minded to the idea that esport, regardless of if you think it's a sport or not, is going to be a huge force in our traditional sporting space. And there's a lot of reasons why. But to give you some context, esports or sports video games have gained so much popularity in recent decades and really does contribute to sports spectatorship through a lot of different mediums. Motion-sensitive video games were kind of thought of as the solution to the sedentary lifestyle that a lot of our, collective community is fall victim to, but it allows players to interact with the system through body movements, which really does give more of that physical active engagement. So anything from the Nintendo Wii, Xbox Kinect, PlayStation Move, which was kind of what was very popular when I was a kid. Now we have Nintendo Switch, Oculus, and other types of virtual reality equipment as being very commonplace. But more often than not, we find that for esports, it's very much more so on the medium of traditional video game sectors, in which you have a controller and an associated console like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, PC, what have you. But really can be very popular with both at-home and very competitive esport athletes. Tournaments have many different athletes or teams that face off in the games that are very popular, things like Fortnite, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, Overwatch, as well as video games like Madden NFL, FIFA, 2K, So anything that, again, is reflective of traditional sporting spaces too. And so another thing that kind of legitimizes this space is the amount of money that goes into esports. Esports generated over $1 billion by 2021 and is anticipated to grow to $5.74 billion by 2030. The purse, which is basically just kind of like the trophy money or the money that you give to the winners, is very competitive and extremely lucrative, in which a lot of athletes can win multi-millions by winning these tournaments. The Call of Duty pot a couple of years ago was $6 million. Which is, of course, divided amongst the athletes, the trainers, and folks who help them get there. Sponsorship is another way in which the legitimized aspects of sports business is impacting esports, in which athletes and their teams get the opportunity to be endorsed by very famous, very traditional sporting brands, like Ninja, who is a very famous kind of one of the first guys to really take on Twitch for streaming his games. But he was endorsed by Red Bull, which if any of us are familiar with Red Bull, yes, it's an energy drink company, but they've also kind of taken a interesting role of endorsing extreme sport athletes. So folks who are skydivers, folks that do extreme scuba diving, or even just like diving from, like a cliff in the, Amalfi Coast. So they very much are legitimizing this field, this entity of esport, by endorsing athletes, because again, they're kind of getting into that niche or extreme sport space. So by that definition, they're also kind of legitimizing it too. Cloud9 was also endorsed by Nike, which is a sports goods brand that, again, you see on NFL jerseys, you see on everybody's shoes. And so again, by these sponsorships, they're implicitly endorsing the esport community as a legitimized sporting space. There's also a lot of investments in which traditional professional athletes and celebrities have invested money into these organizations and these teams, like Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, Drake, giving millions of dollars to develop their own esports team so that they're able to be competitive within their respective game that they play for. And so all this to say that, again, not only do you have opportunities to be involved in the traditional sporting space for sports management, but also have an opportunity to be involved in the esports space too. So again, if you deliver compelling experiences to spectators and participants in any sport or physical activity sphere, sports management, you can expect to have a very successful career. And so, like I said, anticipate to see a lot of these sports management opportunities continue to grow as sports and entertainment lines begin to blur amongst one another, as new technologies enable higher levels of direct engagement. The future of sport business is really only growing brighter. As sports management also becomes more competitive and complex, sports managers who can forge successful partnerships will also be in high demand. Additionally, if you get as much education as you can get a PhD in sports management, just putting that out there. But again, the sports industry is growing more global by the day. There's international aspects. There's so much money to be had. And so just know that there are a lot of things if you are interested in getting into this space. Like I said, even though it is growing, it is still very competitive. So make sure you develop your leadership skills, practical experience, create a network of mentors, develop your communication and problem-solving skills, assess your sports management preparation through classes and just reflection of your own aptitudes towards these things, as well as technological skills and generalizability to a bunch of different sectors in the sports management space. And so please let me know if you have any questions about that. Again, thank you for your flexibility, and hopefully you all got a good kind of awareness of what other opportunities are available to you as a kinesiology student. That being said, your paper 4 is due tonight. We spent an entire lecture going over what researching kin is. I went over all these details before, but again, let me know if you have any questions about this. Make sure that you write about an experimental article. You must turn in your paper and the article PDF, so please don't pay for an article. Make sure you can download it for free. And again, some more clarity over the page maximums. You can have up to 2 pages of writing because there are a lot of things on this prompt. And then you'll also need an additional page for your APA reference. So 3 pages total. And this is just for your paper. This does not include your article PDF. That is a separate thing. It can be as long as it needs to be. But again, let me know if you have any questions about this. That being said, I want you to continue to put this on your radar. Your alternative weight bias paper is due the 5th. Again, if you did the survey at the beginning of the semester, do not do this. You cannot do both. But you can also do the dream career interview and paper as well. So that's also due the same day. Please look over this. If you have any questions, let me know. That being said, for these two papers, the 48-hour grace period does not extend to this. So if you turn it in late, you'll get a 0. You've known about this since the first day of class. So again, let me know if you have any questions about this. But something's coming up. So again, your paper 4 is due tonight. Next week, quiz 4 will be available through all of Thanksgiving break, fall break, through our last week of class. You're more than welcome to complete it anytime during those 2 weeks. The last lecture will be careers in kin, just kind of as a wrap up for the semester. And again, your extra credit papers are due the 5th as well, with our final being the 12th at 10 a.m. in our regular classroom. So again, let me know if you have any questions about this week's content, stuff that's coming up. Have a lovely fall break, and I'll see you when everybody gets back. All right, bye.